The air inside the kaiha was thick enough to drink. It was a cocktail of sweat, hot oil, and the sharp, metallic tang of fear. Every lurch and shudder of our steel beast sent a wave of it washing over us, a constant reminder of the thin line between this cramped, roaring world and the next. Outside Luzon was a furnace. The jungle steamed, the very air heavy with moisture that clung to your skin like a second uniform. But in here, in the belly of our tank we called Kuragain, black steel, it was the heat of the engine, the heat of our own bodies that was suffocating. We were in retreat, a word the officers never used. Strategic repositioning, they called it, but we knew. We had seen the sky over Clark Field. It was not our sky anymore. It belonged to the American Hellcats and Corsairs, silver predators that swooped down with a sound like tearing canvas, spitting death. We saw the ground, too, chewed up by their artillery, littered with the blackened husks of our own trucks and guns. There was no honor in this. There was only the grinding imperative to move, to survive, to fight another day for the Emperor. Sato, our driver, was a master. He had been a fisherman from Chiba, and he guided Kuragain through the muck and ruin of the jungle track with the same steady hands he must have used on a tiller in a storm. But even he couldn't create solid ground where none existed. The monsoon rains had turned the earth into a hungry beast, a soupy, red-brown mire that sucked at our tracks with every rotation. I could feel the strain through the steel plates beneath my feet, a deep groaning protest from the transmission. Before the war, my world was made of straight lines and solid foundations. In Nagoya, I was a bricklayer. I understood the language of stone, the honesty of a level and a plumb line. I knew how to lay a course of bricks so that it would bear weight, so that it would stand for 100 years. My hands were calloused from mortar and stone, not from the loading breech of a 57mm cannon. Now, my world was this chaotic, violent geometry of jungle and steel, and the only foundation I had was the floor of this tank. More speed, Sato, Ito, our gunner, barked from his seat. His eye was pressed to the sight, his knuckles white on the traverse wheel. They're gaining on the right flank. I didn't need to look. I could hear it. The distinct, heavy chatter of an American Browning machine gun. It was a deeper, more confident sound than our own weapons. It sounded like it had an endless supply of ammunition. Then came the sharp crack of rifles, closer this time. They were infantry, ghosts in the dense green, shadowing our column, picking off the stragglers. Sato pushed the engine. I heard the RPMs climb into a desperate whine. The entire hull vibrated, a frantic tremor that rattled my teeth. We lurched forward, then sideways, skidding in the slime. "It's no good, Corporal," Sato yelled back, his voice tight with effort. "The ground is giving way. It's like soup." I felt it before he said it. A final, violent lurch to the left, a sickening dip, and then a stop. Not a gradual slowing, but a sudden dead halt. The engine screamed, a useless howl of rage, and the tracks spun, churning the mud into a frothy mess but finding no purchase. We were stuck. The sound of the spinning track was the sound of a drowning man flailing in the water. Silence from the engine as Sato killed it. And in that silence, the sounds from outside rushed in, louder and more terrifying than before. The crack of rifles was no longer distant. It was right there. A metallic ping echoed through the hull as a bullet struck the turret, then another, and another. They knew we were helpless. This was it, my deepest, darkest fear. Not the bullet, not the bayonet, but this, the steel coffin, trapped. A single well-aimed shell, a Molotov cocktail thrown from the trees, and this cramped space would become a furnace. I could almost feel the heat, smell the burning paint and cooking flesh. My breath caught in my throat, a shard of ice in the suffocating heat. My hands, resting on a cool steel ammunition case, felt slick with sweat. I looked at the escape hatch above, a small square of hope that felt 1,000,000 miles away. "We are dead," Ito whispered. It wasn't a cry of fear, but a flat statement of fact. He was still peering through his sight, as if he could hold back the entire American army with our one cannon. "No," I said. The word came out harder than I intended. The bricklayer in me, the man who solved problems of stress and load and gravity, pushed the terrified soldier aside. Panic was a luxury. Panic was a weak mortar mix that would crumble under pressure. We needed a foundation. "Sato, how deep are we?" I asked, my voice steady, methodical. "The left side up to the bogies." "The right is a little higher, but it's all muck, Corporal Tanaka. Nothing solid." "Ito, give them a shell, high explosive. Into the trees on the left, make them keep their heads down." The cannon roared, a deafening concussion inside the tank that made the whole world shake. The breech slammed back, ejecting the smoking casing, filling the air with the acrid smell of burnt cordite. It was a good smell, the smell of fighting back. "All right," I said, my mind working, seeing not a jungle but a construction site. A problem of leverage and purchase. Pop the side hatch just enough to see, be ready to close it. I leaned over, cracking the heavy steel hatch. A sliver of the green, rain-soaked world appeared, and with it the whine of a bullet skipping past the opening. I slammed it shut, but I had seen enough. The mud was deep, a reddish clay, but there was debris nearby. A shattered palm tree, its trunk splintered into long, fibrous pieces. Further on, the wreck of a Japanese supply truck, half submerged in the mire. Its chassis was twisted, but its steel bed plates were still there. "We're going to build," I said. Sato looked back at me, his face pale in the dim light. "Build what, Corporal?" "A ramp, a foundation, something for the tracks to bite." My plan was simple, born from 100 days of shoring up weak ground for foundations in Nagoya. We needed to get solid material under the sinking track. We would use the tank itself as a shield. Sato and Ito would provide covering fire. I and Morita, our machine gunner, would go out. "Morita, with me. Bring the crowbar. Ito, you have 5 shells left. Use them wisely. Make them count." "Sato, when we give the signal, start the engine and give it power, slow and steady. Not too much, or you'll just spit our ramp out behind you." Opening the top hatch was like being born into hell. The noise was overwhelming. The air was thick with the smell of gunfire and wet earth. A machine gun opened up from the tree line, and slugs stitched a line across the tank's engine deck, sparking and screaming off the steel. We scrambled out, keeping low, using the bulk of Kurogane as cover. The mud was up to my knees. It pulled at my boots with a greedy, sucking sound. Every step was a battle. Morita and I reached the shattered palm tree. He was a farm boy from Hokkaido, strong as an ox. He sunk the crowbar into the splintered wood, and together we heaved. We broke off a huge, heavy section of trunk, maybe 2 meters long. It was slick with sap and rain. We dragged it, slipping and falling, back to the tank. The American bullets were a constant, angry swarm of bees around us. We could hear them thudding into the log as we pulled it. We shoved the log deep into the mud, right in front of the sunken track. It wasn't enough. We needed more. "The truck," I yelled to Morita over the din. We made the terrifying open run to the wrecked truck. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt naked, exposed. I imagined a bullet finding my back at any second. We reached the wreck and threw ourselves behind it. Morita used the crowbar, prying at a bent steel plate from its bed. The metal shrieked in protest. I pulled at it with my bare hands, the jagged edges tearing at my palms. We didn't feel it. We worked with a desperate, frantic energy. Finally, it came free. It was heavy, awkward. We hauled it back, our lungs burning. We laid it over the palm log, creating a crude, solid ramp leading up and out of the deepest part of the mire. We scavenged more debris, smaller logs, flat rocks we dug out of the mud, packing it all in, creating a base. My hands were raw, bleeding, covered in mud and grease, but they felt more alive than they had in months. I was not just a soldier feeding a gun. I was a builder. I was creating something. "That has to be enough," I screamed, hammering my fist on the side of the hull. Get in, get in." We scrambled back through the hatch, slamming it shut behind us, plunging ourselves back into the dim, steel-scented world of the tank. My chest was heaving. I could taste blood and mud in my mouth. "Sato, now," I yelled. I braced myself against the wall. The engine coughed to life, then roared. The tank trembled. I heard the left track engage, the metal teeth biting into the palm log. There was a terrible splintering sound, a groan of protest from the wood. For a moment nothing happened. The track spun. My heart sank. "Steady," I commanded, my voice betraying a tremor. "Easy power." Sato was a good fisherman. He knew how to handle a delicate line. He eased the power, letting the track find its grip. The whole tank lurched, tilting upwards at a sharp angle. I heard the steel plate scrape and grind under the immense weight. It was holding. The wood was holding. The foundation was holding. With a final, deafening groan of tortured steel and splintering wood, Kurogane clawed its way out of the mud. We were free. We lurched forward onto more stable ground, the shouts of triumph from the crew lost in the roar of the engine. Ito sent our last shell into the trees as a parting gift. Sato didn't hesitate. He slammed the tank into gear, and we charged back towards the retreating column, leaving our small, desperate piece of construction to be swallowed by the jungle. Inside, there was no celebration. We were still alive, but we were still in retreat. We just sat in the roaring dark, the stink of our own sweat a testament to what we had done. I looked at my hands. They were trembling now, the adrenaline fading. They were cut and bruised, caked in the red mud of Luzon, but underneath the filth, they were the hands of a builder, a man who, for one brief moment, had imposed order on the chaos. He had laid a foundation in the middle of hell, and it had been strong enough. That day, it was not the way of the warrior that saved us. It was not Bushido or the divine spirit of the emperor. It was the simple, honest knowledge of a bricklayer from Nagoya. It was the memory of leverage, of solid ground, of how to make something that would not sink. And I knew then that I would carry the weight of that memory, that foundation of steel and mud, for the rest of my days. These memories are heavy, but they must be shared. Subscribe to ensure these stories are never forgotten.